Thank you for returning. I didn't think anyone would come back. Now let me talk about this light. That's right, this is a light because of my Maya problem. Setting a Gobo texture in a light is effectively turning into a projector, and whatever texture you set will be projected. Kind of like the bat signal in Batman. You simply draw a black bat with a white background, make it a Targa file, import it into VTF edit, and export it as a VTF and a VTM file, and then place it in the textures folder. I know, sounds like a lot, but there will be a link at the bottom to give you more details. The light will pass the shape of the bat, and then you're ready to call Batman. But there's one terrible problem which I found. When playing with the settings, radius in particular, look what happens. Pressing the space bar plays it absolutely fine, but as I scrub along the timeline, you get this mad flickering. Unfortunately, this is what happens during the render too. So if your lights are acting up, try playing around with these settings. I'm aware there's some flickering to do with volumetric intensity too, so maybe try that out as well. At one point I was considering a text overlay, but it wouldn't have let me zoom out without obviously highlighting the lack of depth. But this Gobo texture really saved the day. I'd like to reveal another secret. Because of the importing issue and the lack of scaling, this letter I was composed entirely of shelves, with a neatly positioned ladder to cover the middle. Speaking of ladder, isn't it strange how this ladder is completely a different shade to the others? I copied and pasted from it too. Anyway, I'm aware this commentary is getting rather long, so I'm going to speed up the next few topics. Cameraing. For the motion of the camera, I first tried the graph editor, like the Valve tutorial suggested, but since I was using the motion editor for most of the time, it just felt more natural to stick with it. In summary, if you want a clean camera movement, I'd go with the graph editor, whereas the motion editor can get a little messy. Basically, with the motion editor, you can position the camera where you want it to be, and then use the round tool to fill out a motion, like so. Timing. I think this is the best time to show you what my final view looks like. As you can see, I had no sense of time when I was doing this pose-to-pose animation, shown by the different amounts of reds and greens in the timeline, which is understandable since I'm new. But thankfully in Source Filmmaker there are two main things that you can do to help with your timing. You can either go into the motion editor and adjust the time lengths between each motion by alt-dragging the edges, or if your posing was fairly well paced, you can do it via the clip editor and shifting the scale, using Alt, Shift and Control. You can even blade these shots for even more control. So to recap on alt dragging, select the model and the time you want to edit, and then simply drag from where you want something to be extended or to contract. So I've tried to contract here and the result is actually an improvement. The bobbing of the head makes it more realistic. Wish I played around with this sooner. Another method is to control the speed of the entire shot. You can press Alt Shift Control in the middle of a shot and drag it to your liking. Or better yet, right click the shot, edit clip, and set time scale. Sounds. I'm not really a sound person, although I'd love to get into voice acting, but getting the right music composition was a challenge. There were about 4 changes in moods, and alternating them would just make the music messy. Most of the sounds were from Valve's extensive inbuilt library, and you have to assign a time for each sound. Not the easiest of jobs, but if you're in actor mode by pressing F11, you could reenact all the TF2 character movements and sounds. I used Audacity for the voices, and this brings me to SFM Problem number 2. You cannot set volumes higher than the original file, so it cannot exceed 1. So make sure for loud noises you record it with a little extra volume, because you can always decrease it later. Also, as a tip, if you have music in your piece, try to decide what music to put in first. Since I was relying on pre-recorded music, I had to chop a song in half and adjust all the timings. Would you believe the whole project was originally meant to last a minute? Lastly, rendering. We are near the end, and this was a nightmare of a task, being so close to the goal and not being able to finish it. So you finished the animation and want to render? Well, here's SFM problem number 3. If audio is muted on a clip editor, you will not render audio in your final file. Sadly, this happened at one point and I wasted about 20 minutes of rendering time, so make sure it's ticked, not muted in the clip editor, and we're good to go. Now which format is best? Well, from trial and error I found that AVI keeps your brightness but loses color and doubles the size of an MP4. The MP4 retains the color, but it's really dark. The H.264 codec brightens it more than the MP4, fades the color and gives it a smaller size. And I can't seem to open it with Windows Media Player, probably a codec problem, but with VLC it's fine. I chose the MP4 and brightened up every shot so that it would hopefully look normal. I then passed it onto Adobe After Effects, which messed up the sounds, so I had to export the wave separately, and it was fine after then. Finally, I uploaded it onto YouTube, which made it slightly darker during conversion, so up the brightness and hope for the best is what I'd suggest. And don't forget to fill out any gaps you have in your clip editor with slugs, otherwise your render will stop as soon as you reach a gap. Pretty cool term though, right? Even tiny gaps, such as this one. Helpful hint, I don't know, 7? On your camera settings via the element viewer, when it says depth quality or motion blur quality, don't increase these too high as they will add on to your rendering time significantly. This lighting scene in particular caused me hell. In terms of values, some flickering can be reduced by increasing the quality, but I wouldn't go as high as 10. Now to finish this, I'll throw in one more SFM problem, number 4. There is no easy way to crossfade. Apparently there is a way, but I've not found it. And I might as well throw in my whole importing problem as number 5. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you had found this video helpful in at least one way. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and I'll be very grateful. Leave any comments and I'll see you guys on my next project.